Well, hello, and welcome to Trash with a capital T, where we give trashy books and movies the love they truly deserve, and some deserve more than others. I'm your host, Bobby. New videos are posted here every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you like what you see during the video, drop a like. It makes me feel good, helps the channel. And you know what? There's always new stuff posting, so you might as well subscribe. Just saying. Okay, so I had actually filmed and scheduled a VC Andrews recommendation video, and I wasn't very happy with it. But I really wanted to get VC Andrews into the channel because I've been reading. I need to move this down a little bit. I've been reading a lot of her books lately. Well, we'll get into that. I've been reading a lot of VC Andrews books lately, and this is an author that I come back to pretty regularly in almost a comfort read kind of way, which I've had to explore a little bit because these books are quite shocking. But I thought instead of recommending books, why don't I just do a little primer? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what V.C. Andrews is. I'm just adjusting books while talking. So the first thing you have to understand is V.C. Andrews is actually two authors, not just one. The original author, Virginia Andrews, wrote 8 books before passing away from breast cancer. Her estate and the publisher then took the books that she had been working on at the time and brought in a ghostwriter by the name of Andrew Niederman to continue writing the remaining books for the series. And because those proved popular, then to continue writing under the name. And Andrew Niederman has been writing as V.C. Andrews since it looks like 1987. So he has been writing as V.C. Andrews for almost 40 years. He has written as V.C. Andrews longer than Virginia Andrews wrote as V.C. Andrews. But I will say there is a also very distinct difference between V.C. Andrews' writing and Andrew Niederman's writing. But we'll get into that as we go through the books. And kind of what you can expect and where to start depending on your personal taste. So the original Virginia Andrews, the original V.C. Andrews, wrote the first 4 of the Dollenganger books, which starts with Flowers in the Attic. She also wrote My Sweet Audrina, and she wrote the first 2 books in the Castile series, which starts with Heaven. Andrew Niederman took over on book 3, which was partially written by Virginia Andrews, but had not been completed. The 5th Dollenganger book, Garden of Shadows, was written completely by Andrew Niederman, I believe, based off an outline that V.C. Andrews had written. So keep that in mind. You are dealing with 2 authors with 2 very distinct voices. You're also dealing with, because these books have been coming out for so long, you are dealing with several different eras of books. So what you start with is the family sagas. Let me explain what those are. These are Gothic stories where you start with a female main character around the age of 12 to maybe 15. And you follow in the first book her move from childhood into early adulthood. And that's also where we establish the base trauma or traumatic event that is kind of shaping her world, and will kind of spiral everything out from there. In Flowers in the Attic, we are in Kathy's head, Kathy Dollenganger. I forget what the name, they switch last names so many times in these books. But you start with Kathy and her sibling Chris, who is a brother who's around the same age, and Carrie and Corey, the 2 younger twins. And obviously the story is they are locked in an attic. Horrible things happen. There is some incest, plenty of shock and horror. This was the book, when I read it, where I finally understood why V.C. Andrews was in the horror section in the bookstore. This is not easy to define horror, but it is very much a horror novel. It is quite shocking. It is quite depressing and dark and bleak. And the kids go through a lot. I love Kathy as a main character. I love the way Virginia Andrews develops her voice throughout the book. This is obviously the book where you tell most people to start. It is quintessential V.C. Andrews. I know a lot of other people do love My Sweet Audrina, and it is quite good. It is also a standalone. So if you don't want to devote yourself to a series, this one is a good place to start. It has plenty of twists and turns and shocks and surprises. It also has a staircase that claims a lot of lives. My dog Mochi's middle name is Audrina. All my dogs have middle names because I'm that kind of dog owner. But Mochi's middle name is Audrina because when she was a puppy, she kept trying to go downstairs. We have a lot of stairs in my house. And she terrified me. And my husband and I just watched the TV movie of this, which is quite fun. And we started calling her Audrina because of that, because we were worried she was going to fall down the stairs and kill herself. So, but you have the family sagas. The family sagas are structured in a way where you follow the main character. Now, the Dollengangers are different. So we're going to remove the Dollengangers for a second. The Dollengangers really just stick with Kathy, although we do shift perspective to her kids eventually in book 3 and 4, and book 5 shifts to her grandmother. But it's not the typical V.C. Andrews structure. This typical V.C. Andrews structure is actually established with the Castile series, with Heaven, where you have a named heroine. I'm going to use one of the books I have in front of me because I actually don't own Heaven. I've read it. I don't particularly love it, but I'll use this one. So you have a named heroine. In this case, it's Dawn. This is the first book in the Cutler series. In this book, we follow Dawn. She's starting, I want to say, in high school. So she's a little older than the previous characters. And we follow her main traumatic event in the beginning. In this case, Dawn finds out that the family she thought was her family is in fact not, and that her parents might have kidnapped her as a baby. And in truth, she is the daughter of a rich hotel family. And she is taken to that rich family and Cinderellaed by the evil grandmother. We get the main setup here, and Dawn as a character is established. Then book 2 and 3 will continue Dawn's journey and her relationships with the men in her life. And eventually, for her, and for a lot of these, she does have a daughter. That daughter then takes over for book 4. And we follow her story for book 4 as she has to contend with the dark history of the family. In this case, the Cutler family. The 5th book follows Dawn's, I want to say her mother, but it's always a prequel. So the 4th book is a character who is born during the process of the first 3 books. The 5th book is usually a prequel of someone who is already dead by the start of the first book. So we follow that structure for Dawn, Ruby, and Melody. I love Ruby. Ruby is actually my personal favorite out of the family sagas. I love her as a character. I think it's really fun. The writing is hammy as all get out. Like, do not go in expecting good writing. It is cheesy. But this is the one that I think is the most fun and accessible as well, because while it does deal with some heavy topics, it doesn't really touch some of the more extreme stuff. Like Dawn has a sexual assault scene. That's why I don't usually recommend this one first. Ruby avoids that. It does, like I said, there's still heavy themes, but Ruby is really fun. Ruby follows a young woman who lives in Louisiana bayous with her grandmere, and she is happy and content with her life. She's a talented painter, but then when her grandmere dies, her grandfather tries to sell her to an older man to be his wife. So she escapes and finds her actual birth father, and all kind of hell breaks loose off of that. Ruby is a very active character. She is very much stands up for herself. She is very much someone who gets in there and defends herself. And that is why I love her. She is not a typical V.C. Andrews heroine in that regard. Some of these characters can be quite passive, which always kind of bugs me. Ruby is the character where I was like, yes, I really like her. And I like the way she does have some moral conflict and stuff like that. But as a character, she's really fun, and the story is fun. But like I said, don't expect good writing. It is fun, though. And the TV movie is quite fun, too. After that, we get Melody. So those follow the 5-book structure. Heaven. Well, Dollengangers do, but not the same way. But Heaven, Dawn, Ruby, and Melody. By the next family saga, the 5th book is dropped, essentially. There was a 5th novella that was released. They do have like 5th novellas that are kind of released, but overall they're not published as main entry books. So you have the next series, the Hudson series, which starts with Rain. This is the first time we have a lead female character of color. Rain is biracial, and that does play a big part into the story. That makes me a little uncomfortable. I still want to read this. I know the Hudson series is actually pretty well loved. It was loved enough to have a movie produced by it. I don't think the movie was very well received, but there is a movie of just the first book. But I do know people like the Hudson series and like Rain as a character. In this one, we do follow Rain for the first 3 books. The 4th book, we follow her daughter. There is no prequel book that was widely released. And then finally, we get to Willow, which is the De Beers series. And I believe this follows similarly. We dropped the 5th book. And I think the 4th book follows a cousin. I started this one. I did not love it. I actually found it quite stuffy, but I don't know if a ton of people love this one. This is the end of the family sagas, is Willow. But if you're looking for something a little grander, a little bigger, the family sagas might be somewhere to start. Just know if you are starting with the Dollenganger or Heaven books, you are starting in much darker territory. If you want something that might be a little more accessible, the Niedermans might, while the writing is nowhere near as good, the Niederman might be the place to start. My obvious recommendation is Ruby, but one of my close friends read Melody. She took I gave her my copy during the pandemic because she had nothing to do, and she devoured it, loved it. So that might be a good place to start as well. I know people love Rain, but if you're looking for something a little more epic, something that goes on a little longer that you can dig into, that might be where you want to start. So after Willow, we have two kind of divergent things. We have the mini series, and then we have the kind of duology, trilogies, and standalones. I actually really like this era, and I'll explain why when we get to them. But let's start with the miniseries. Now, I have not started these yet, but I do have the first book for all three miniseries. And here's something I'm going to bring up. I want to pick one of these miniseries and just read it like I've been doing like the Left Behind books. So I'm going to read them, see which ones I want to start with, and kind of go through that. Because I love V.C. Andrews, and these are shorter and easier to kind of read quickly. Because these are not short. So the first series was the Orphan series, and the first book in that is Butterfly. The way these miniseries work is you have 4 books that follow a young woman or a young girl. The first 4 books are the miniseries books. These are much shorter books, coming in maybe to 100, 150 pages. Then you have a 5th book, which is when all the characters come together, and that is a full-length novel that combines all 4 characters. So Orphan starts with Butterfly. Wildflowers starts with Misty. I swear none of these girls are strippers. And I have to say that before this one. And the final miniseries that they did, Shooting Stars, starts with Cinnamon. If I remember correctly, obviously the Orphan series, we're following a series of orphans. With Wildflowers, we are following young girls who are in group therapy because they come from families of divorce. And with Shooting Stars, we are following young women who are talented artists and musicians. Cinnamon, I believe, is a violinist. I have not really experienced these. Like I said, I do want to kind of pick one of these series and kind of follow it like I do the Left Behind books. It's not a huge commitment because there's only like 5 books in the series. But I think that would be fun. So, if you guys have any recommendations, let me know in the comments which one I should start with out of these. I think I'm going to start with Butterfly, but if anyone is like, no, you need to start with Cinnamon or you need to start with Misty, I'll take your advice. And then while that is going on, you then have the move to shorter series. So you'll have either trilogies, duologies. The trilogies actually are a little rarer. You do have them. The Gemini series is a trilogy. I believe... What is the other trilogy? Some of them will have like a little digital offshoot. But you're not seeing the full family sagas. The one I'm reading, I'm actually reading 2. So I started April Shadows. I'm almost done with this. This will get a full review, and the other one I'm reading is going to get a full review as well. I'm reading Forbidden Sister, or listening to it. This follows April through both books and doesn't really do a big time jump. We're just getting kind of like the end of her adolescence. So it would be one book here is split into 2. Now I do know that some of the books kind of span a little more time, but generally you're just getting a longer version of what the first 2 books would be. We're losing a lot of the adulthood stuff, and we're losing the prequels and the sequels. And that's kind of fine by me, because some of these series are a big commitment, and some of those middle books are really, really dull. But yeah. So these books, this is why these books I kind of like a little more. They're not as dark. They're nowhere near as dark. So without going into spoilers, I'm going to do spoilers when I do the final review. Without going into spoilers, April Shadows, and to some degree Forbidden Sister as well, is much more of a domestic drama. You do not have the exceptionally creepy or horrific in there. You also don't have some of the more extreme subject matter like incest. But they're domestic dramas. They're still very soapy. There's lots of twists and turns. It's very unrealistic in the fact that like the way characters just kind of tragically die off at the most opportune times. And you do still deal with a lot of trauma. But these almost feel like, I was talking to my husband about this because I'm like, why do I like these? I shouldn't like these. These are not exciting books, but when I get caught in them, I devour them. And it's because they had the same feeling of like an old movie. You know, even if they're set in modern times, they feel like something you'd catch on the TV on a rainy Sunday and you just kind of get lost in it. It's not a movie you've ever really heard of. And it might have been a movie of the week or a Lifetime movie, but it feels like an old movie. Especially because the characters all have a very formal way of speaking and everything is very, very buttoned up. Like this is set in modern day 2005 and the characters have computers. They're shopping on Amazon. They talk about stuff like that. They have cell phones. But the way they talk and the way they act doesn't feel natural for the time. It also doesn't feel natural for the character. But that's kind of, that artificiality is kind of what works for me. I go into this knowing Andrew Niederman does not know anything about what it was like to be a young woman or a young girl growing up in the early 2000s and the experiences that they had. I think he did all his research from Judy Blume books, which no knock against Judy Blume. Love her. Her adult book Wifey is a really fun one. But that's part of the charm, is that these are very much movie of the week turned into book form. And I had a blast with it. I'm still having a blast. I've got like 30 pages left. I'm having a blast with this book. And I'm having a blast with Forbidden Sister. The stakes are not super high. They're not super... what's the way? Like you're not dealing with kids locked away in an attic who are being tortured by their evil mother. You're dealing with someone who's dealing with a lot of loss and trying to struggle with growing up without anyone there to really care for them because of it. And you're dealing with people who are dealing with family secrets and trauma that are hanging over their adolescence, even if their family life seems good. Obviously, in some of the other books, we get much campier. You get like older siblings trying to replace the mother. You get, what was House of Secrets? It was a lot of like, oh no, this is actually your brother. This is not your mother. This is all those twists and turns. House of Secrets was a really fun one. But it pulls way back on the darkness. It's much softer. So while I love Flowers in the Attic and I love the early stuff, I do understand for like, if my mental health ain't ready for it, jump into one of these is probably the better option. And they're a little harder to find, but they're litter used bookstores across the nation. So if it sounds interesting, check it out. I actually went on a bit of a buying spree. So I showed you all of the starting books and some of the other ones. Like I have all of the Hudson books. I haven't read any of these yet. I just got them. Rain is exceptionally hard to find. And I think I'm going to do these out of order. But I have Rain, which is this. I love this cover with the step back. Look at that. Love the step back art. Sadly, they don't do that anymore. And then I have Eye of the Storm, which, what the hell is going on there? Like, what the hell? Can't wait. Lightning Strikes. Ah! Oh, that is another good creepy one. And then End of the Rainbow, which is the one that follows Rain's daughter, Summer. I don't know why Rain is so hard to find. I guess people are holding on to it. But, so I bought all of those. I also bought a crap ton of the standalones and like the miniseries. Like, I showed you guys the first book. So I showed you Cinnamon. Oof. And I showed you Butterfly. So I have Misty. And then I bought the rest of the series because I went on eBay. And I got, so the next one is Star. And then Jade. The covers on these are freaking insane. And then Cat. I think I did those in order. I did. And then the final book, which is Into the Garden, which actually has the step back art. And you can see all the girls together in their creepy little situation. And then I got some other ones. So I got the sequel to April Shadows. I'm reaching over. And then I grabbed these. These are first books in other series. And one of these I got because the plot description made me uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, I got to see how this gets handled. And the reviews for it were not great. So it mega DNF'd. But I was like, I gotta see. I gotta see how badly this could be handled. So the first one I got was Celeste, which is part of the Gemini trilogy. This is a trilogy. The second book is Black Cat, and I believe the third book is Child of Darkness or Child of Darkness. I think. No, hold on. Let me spot check. Because this is Child of Darkness. Okay. So this is one where like someone is forced to be their dead sibling, which is a really fun soapy thing. This is the one that makes me uncomfortable. And I got it because I was like, I got to see. I got it. It's just one of those like test your gag reflex kind of books. Broken Flower, about a young... So the character in this book is actually a child, but she develops really quickly and has to deal with a lot of horrible people. I have a feeling I'm not going to love this one, but for some reason, my brain is like, hey, that makes you uncomfortable. You should read it. You should experience that uncomfortableness and form an opinion, obviously. So, Broken Flower. I believe this... I forget what the second is. Scattered Leaves. So I don't hold out hope for this one. This one's probably not going to be read right away either. And I have more that I didn't bring up because I just didn't feel like lugging them all up from my library. So, yeah, obviously, I love me some V.C. Andrews. I love experiencing these books. I love the campiness of it, the soapiness of it. Ooh, books are falling. I'll go pick that up in a minute. But if you're going to start, this is kind of a way to look at where do I want to jump in? Because obviously, V.C. Andrews, V.C. Andrews is kind of a genre all its own. It's very gothic and twisty and turny and soapy. They're very soap opera-esque, especially the Niederman books. Just be ready for that. Not so much with the original Virginia Andrews, the Virginia Andrews books. Those, while twisty, definitely have a more serious tone to them. The later ones, much more soapy. Also, like, you're dealing with some pretty heavy topics. But this might give you an idea of where to jump in and give you an idea of like what these kind of stories are. I will say, the writing quality for the Andrew Niederman books can be a little wild and varied. But don't go in expecting great prose. Expect pulp, expect fun, expect something that surprisingly will pull you in, but do not expect these books to read like very well written. These are pulp. These are pulp paperback novels. That is what they're meant to be. They're meant to be enjoyed that way. And I actually haven't really experienced a lot of the more recent V.C. Andrews books. I think starting with like The Umbrella Lady. There's a series going on right now that has to do with a young woman who comes out as a lesbian and is disowned by her family. And they're going for a more mature look. They also did a prequel series to the Dollengangers. They've done sequel books to the Dollengangers. So the more recent stuff I'm not as versed with, and it looks like it's aiming for something a little more mature. So I can't speak to those. I'm going to try some out, but just not at this very moment. I'm kind of in that early 2000s range where they're just salacious enough. This one is hilarious to me because the big twist is that a character... Well, no, there's actually a bigger twist that comes in. But the big selling point was one of these characters is a lesbian. It's 2005. Lesbians were shocking. Nowadays, who cares? But, well, actually, a lot of people, apparently, probably call this book woke garbage. Anyways, that is kind of where I'm at with my V.C. Andrews experience. I highly recommend checking them out, though, especially if you're looking for a beach read. I will warn you, some of these books, the way they were published, this is really a problem. These books did not age well physically. I'm going to show you the sequel book. I've bought this book twice, and both books were in terrible condition. These books just start falling apart. They're very stiff. The pages are very stiff. And I think I have a copy of Broken Wings downstairs that has the same kind of problem. So I will warn you, be careful when you buy these because some of them aren't in the greatest condition. But otherwise, I say check out V.C. Andrews. That might give you a good idea of where to start with. The family sagas are fun, but they are a commitment. So you may want to start with something like My Sweet Audrina. I don't know. It's up to you. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. Just to go over the housekeeping again. New videos are posted every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you like what you saw, subscribe and give me a like. Makes me feel good. Helps the channel. And as I always say, love what you love. Enjoy what you're reading and watching. And have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.